Yes, I guess that's an answer to your question. Yeah.
Hands up. Right, we're moving forward now. Glasses, blondie hair, that's you.
What is your process for constructing these big, intricate plots in your novel?
Weed.
Yeah, no, are you kidding? No, I stopped that pretty early on. I mean, I left it behind in my archaeology days.
Points.
Yeah. I mean, the brain gets too lazy. You just can't do it. So, I had certain scenes in that I knew were going to show up in The Crippled God. And they were some fairly major ones. And then it was simply a question of writing my way to get there, but to not rush myself, to be very patient about it, and to build, because those scenes only work if you carry the emotional impact of the previous 9 books. One of them is characterized by adjective or wordlessly making a sound, a scream, basically. And that only means anything if you've read and understood what she's gone through to get there. Do you see what I mean? So I needed to really be careful in my preparations to get up to those scenes, to the payoffs. And so I would be foreshadowing through all 10 books. It was a great, it turned out by accident, but I think, probably even with Gardens of the Moon, my editor, who's a wonderful guy, stayed with me through the entire series here in the UK. Tor, I get a different editor every month. I don't know what's going on there. But Bantam UK has been brilliant, and Simon Taylor stayed with me. And he would do this edit, and the manuscript would come back to me. He'd say, well, it's a little bit long along this area. Can we cut this out, maybe this, and make it a bit leaner? And I'd write back saying, well, actually, what happens in those 2 paragraphs comes back in book 7 or book 9. So I can't cut it out. And finally, he gave up. And so it worked. It was brilliant. And but the thing was, I wasn't lying. It's all built that way. It's built to slowly add resonance to every event that's occurring until you get to, where are you, halfway through Crippled God?
I'm probably the least experienced person right here. I started Crippled God about a week ago. So I'm hoping not. You can ruin it. It doesn't matter.
No, you have no idea what's coming. No.
I personally, I started reading these books about a year ago, and it's been everything I've done in every waking moment that hasn't involved my actual life has been glued to these books, and hence my first question being, what's wrong with him? Because I don't know what's going on anymore. My whole life is wrong. And I began Crippled God maybe 4 days ago, and I think I'm maybe a quarter way through, maybe. Wow. And I'm burning. My girlfriend doesn't even know what my name is anymore. The dogs don't talk to me, nothing happens. There's no bills getting paid. So I've just been doing this, and I'm committed. The next 2 years is just going through all this stuff, every side book, and then starting again.
How many people have finished the series here? Is there anybody who hasn't? Sorry?
5 times.
5 times.
I'm following you from the beginning.
Right. Okay, so were there people who haven't finished the series? You got a few answers?
I just bought the remaining 5 books because I was waiting for them to finish. Okay. So.
Close your ears, folks.
No spoilers.
Yeah,
but,
let's keep it civil. Relax.
Yeah.
Fight outside afterwards.
Who here is familiar with Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey? Okay. Well, a lot of novels basically try to emulate that. They create a character who undertakes the hero's journey. I did not want to do that. What I wanted to do was have characters undertake parts of the hero's journey, and some would complete those parts, others would fail at those parts. I wanted the hero's journey to be the readers. So to get from book 1 to book 10 is the hero's journey.
Absolute stress. Hands up. Okay, joint lad. that's you. Yeah, there's no one behind you, man.
You know what? You know what? You look like Joe Abercrombie. Did you know that? So what the hell are you doing here?
Let's have you, and I'm going to move it forward, alright?
Who is the Malazan series, hands down, the most powerful character?
Who was the most powerful character in the entire series?
Crap. Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah.
And the funniest.
Yeah.
Sticky donuts.
Hands up again. Okay, this chap here, beard. That's you. Yeah, I know half of us. I know. It's just the way it's going to work out. I'm sorry.
I was wondering, you played as a player and as a GM for many campaigns over a long periods of time. How do you keep the campaigns going and keep the players actually showing up and actually able to show up on such a long term and ambitious?
Man, find better friends. Really? Of course they should show up. Yeah.
If the microphone wasn't attached, he would have dropped it. Hands up. We'll get over to you. We'll get to you in a second. That's you, chap.
How closely do you and Cam work together on the books? Because there's not many, but a couple discrepancy I found between yours and his.
Oh, no doubt. We hardly work together at all. We meet up once a year, usually once a year, at a conference in Orlando called International Conference on the Fantastic and the Arts. It's more of an academic conference, and we go there, hang out by the pool, and get drunk and talk about what we're working on. And so we work through some stories there, and then he goes back and does what he does. And often I don't see the manuscript until the book's been published.
Okay, so sorry, that was Orlando, and that was where?
We went out a word with him, did
More than one.
All right.
Yeah.
Hands up. Okay, let's go to you. Yeah.
So you started from RPGs, and lots of them leave magic how it feels vague. Do you have an idea of how it would feel to like open a warren, or is it like only describable as a metaphor?
I'm glad you used the word metaphor. A lot of writers of fantasy, they end up creating a magic system that is basically a replacement for technology. So they've got all the rules. All the rules are laid out. And once you do that, you've lost the purpose of magic in fantasy. Because the original purpose of magic in fantasy is to invoke a sense of wonder and mystery. And so once you've explained it all, you've lost it. So we made a point of never explaining the magic, as you may have noticed.
Hands up. I'll get to you guys last, right? You guys are going to be the last group here. You don't want to stop. Put your hand down. I'm greedy. You. Yeah.
I just wondering about. So how did you make the transition between studying archaeology and anthropology and working in the field to becoming an author and becoming a full-time author then after?
Well, field work is summer. You get paid to work on a dig during the summer, and so I continued doing that even when I was taking the writing program at the University of Victoria. So winters I would do. I'd learned how to basically be a short story writer. That's what I learned. I've never learned to be a novelist, and I still don't know how to be a novelist. So in many ways, this is the world's longest short story. No, I'm not kidding, because you write it differently. You write a short story very differently from how you write a novel. In a novel, you can luxuriate, you can wander around. Short stories, every sentence has to have at least 2 levels of meaning. And as you have all discovered, especially with rereads, you see that that's how it works. And I know there's a group of people doing a podcast that have just finished discussing Gardens of the Moon. One of them has read it before, but the other 2 are new. And of those 2 new people, one of them has, as her only experience in fantasy, reading Hunger Games. And when I heard that, I thought, you poor lady. And even worse, she used the audiobook for Gardens of the Moon. So she was utterly lost and hated the novel from start to finish. And I'm not surprised, because sometimes you got to go back on a few lines. You actually got to go back and think what's being said here. And because I learned within universities, the push there is for he said, she said. So you show, you don't tell, right? You don't dump the exposition all over the place. So in many ways, it may seem like a dense writing style, but it's actually very terse style. I don't give you a lot. And so it's up to you to work that stuff out. So, yeah, anyways, it's that transition was fairly straightforward. It took a long time for me to actually become a full-time writer. I guess I've been full-time for about 19 years now.
Hands up! Yourself there?
Hello. So whenever you decided to write Midnight Tides, do you feel there was risk involved? Because it was a completely new continent. The only character that we knew was Charles Singar.
Yeah.
And so whenever it came to you, now it was your producers going, "Well, Stephen, what are you doing here?"
Yeah, and I would tell them this is the third point of the triangle. So this is the last new place and new characters we're going to be and then the entire series ultimately converges on that spot. Yeah, it was a bit of a risk. I knew that. But then they were all in, right? They were screwed. They couldn't back out.
Too late. Hand up. Yourself there at the back. That's you.
All right. I wanted to ask you.
Taxi man, we waited on you outside.
We did. We all waited on you.
The reason you sat here for 5 minutes is this chap got lost in the cab and we waited for him outside. Hang on, before you begin. He made it. He made it. Let's go.
What interests me is your state of attention while writing. While you talked about being a writer, when I read your books, and I read them 5 times, I touched a kind of magic that is not in the words, but in the state of attention that you had while writing.
Intention?
Attention.
Attention.
That's something you were, the way I experienced it and the way I read them, I went into a kind of trance state. And this is why those people are here, because they were not just by technique or by words, but by a sense of magic that was touching their personal life. For me, this is one question. And the second is, I was a soldier, a medic, and a healer in my life. And you wrote about those roles as if you really were there. And I know you were not in war while I was. And I wondered, from where did you get this intimate personal knowledge of war, of healing? That's the question.
Okay. So, 2 questions, basically, yes?
Yes.
All right, the first one, attention. Remember I mentioned that Toll of Hounds is the cipher. And when I mentioned the fact that this series is metafictional, do people understand what I'm saying there? Right? Metafictional is a kind of self-conscious storytelling. So it's when you fall into a fiction, you're reading a book, you kind of do a mental shift where you're flowing into that world, and it's as if you're reading a history book or something along those lines. So in other words, what is reported to you is what is real, and what is reported to you is always authentic, is always honest, is always factual. But of course, the structure of storytelling is actually the opposite of that. Everything is done with intention to create an emotional effect. And so the entire 10-book series is actually the voice of a storyteller who is writing and giving you only those details that storyteller deems necessary to bring you to an emotional point. And so it is this making sense?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's why it's metafictional. That's why Krupp is actually Stephen Erikson at the same time, right? I'm creating for an emotional effect. And and of course, the whole process involves me actually experiencing those emotional effects before you guys do. So I'm accompanying you on that journey.